He flew in quietly. He left even more quietly. For 8 days, Prince Harry moved through Britain almost like a ghost, no big photo calls, no grand statements. And yet, behind closed doors, something happened that hadn't happened in years. Harry sat down with his father. Meghan brought the children to Highgrove House. And insiders are now calling it emotional. But here's the question nobody can quite agree on: was this the beginning of a real reconciliation? Or just another carefully managed moment in a family saga that keeps promising healing and keeps falling short? Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what happened during Harry's July visit, why it's dividing royal watchers, and what it might mean for the future of the Sussexes in Britain. It's July 2026. Prince Harry, now 41 years old, touches down in the UK, and not for a wedding, not for a funeral, not for one of the headline-grabbing family clashes we've grown used to. This time, officially, it's about sport. Harry is in the country to promote the 2027 Invictus Games, the international competition he founded for wounded and injured servicemen and women, which is set to be hosted in Birmingham the following year. On paper, it's a straightforward trip. A working visit. The kind of thing members of the royal family, even estranged ones, do all the time. But with Harry, nothing is ever quite that simple. Because underneath the official schedule of Invictus events, there's a second story running in parallel. A story about a father and son who haven't spoken properly in years. A story about a duchess trying to protect her image after a bruising few seasons of headlines. And a story about a security battle that has followed Harry across 2 continents and shows no sign of ending. To understand why this single trip matters so much, you need to understand where Harry has been, and just how far the distance between him and the family he was born into has grown. Back in January 2020, Harry and Meghan stunned the world by announcing they were stepping back as senior working royals. The tabloids called it Megxit. The couple called it a search for peace. Whatever you call it, the fallout was seismic, a rupture in the House of Windsor that hasn't fully healed to this day. They relocated to California. They signed deals with Netflix and Spotify. Harry published a deeply personal memoir, Spare, that laid bare private family tensions in a way no royal had ever done before. And with every interview, every documentary, every headline, the gap between Harry and the family back home seemed to widen rather than close. One of the most consequential fallouts from that split involved something a lot of people don't immediately think about: security. When Harry left his role as a working royal, his automatic entitlement to UK police protection changed too. That triggered a legal fight that has rumbled on for years, with Harry challenging the decision through the British courts, arguing that as a former working royal, and as someone who says he still faces genuine threats, he should be entitled to the same level of protection he once had. He has, at points, lost those legal battles. But he hasn't given up the fight. And that's crucial context for understanding what happened this July, because this trip wasn't just personal. It was also, in many ways, strategic. Then there's the other wound that never quite closes: his relationship with his older brother. Once inseparable, the heir and the spare, a phrase Harry himself would later turn into a book title, William and Harry's bond has reportedly deteriorated to the point where, according to sources, there is now almost no contact between them at all. Royal watchers have speculated for years about whether the rift could ever be repaired. This July's visit was, for many, a test of exactly that question. So when Harry landed in Britain this month, he wasn't just arriving as a sports ambassador. He was arriving as a man carrying years of legal battles, personal grievances, and a fractured family relationship, all of it simmering just beneath the surface of a routine trip. Harry touched down in the UK on July 6. Notably, he arrived without Meghan and the children. For several days, it was just him, attending engagements tied to the Invictus Games, keeping a relatively low public profile compared to some of his previous UK visits. Royal watchers immediately began speculating. Would Meghan join him this time? Their last joint UK visit had been back in 2022. Would the children, Archie, now 6, and Lilibet, 5, make an appearance on British soil at all? The answer came on the evening of July 10, a Thursday. Meghan Markle flew in to join her husband, bringing Archie and Lilibet with her. And what happened next is where the story gets interesting. That same day, July 10th, King Charles and Queen Camilla hosted the Sussex family at Highgrove House, the King's private Gloucestershire residence. This wasn't a public engagement. There were no cameras, no official statements, no carefully staged photographs released to the press. It was, by every account, a private family gathering. According to a source who spoke to the Mirror, the meeting was described in a single, striking word: emotional. Think about what that means for a moment. This was reportedly the first time King Charles had seen his grandchildren, Archie and Lilibet, in years. For a monarch who has spent the last couple of years dealing with his own well-documented health battles, a private reunion with grandchildren he barely knows is not a small thing. It's the kind of moment that, even stripped of royal politics, would be emotional for almost any grandfather. Sources close to the situation suggest that both Harry and his father left that meeting hoping to arrange something similar again in the future, a sign, perhaps, that neither side wants this to be a one-off. Here's the part that genuinely surprised royal commentators: for the vast majority of the trip, Meghan and the children were almost never seen. From the moment they arrived on July 10th until the family flew back to the United States, they largely stayed out of public view entirely. Some commentators have called this astonishing, a rare case of a Sussex family visit generating headlines not because of what was seen, but because of how little was seen. In an era where nearly every royal outing is photographed from multiple angles within minutes, going almost entirely undetected for days is no small feat. But away from the warmth of Highgrove House, a very different, much colder conversation was reportedly happening. It's being reported that Harry used this visit, or the period immediately around it, to push, once again, for a review of his UK security arrangements. According to these reports, Harry submitted a report from his own private security firm suggesting he remains a genuine terror target, and used that report to demand an urgent reassessment of his protection. This is a significant escalation. It's one thing to challenge a security decision through the courts, as Harry has done for years. It's another to arrive on British soil with a private intelligence-style assessment in hand, essentially asking officials to reconsider the entire framework of his protection. And that detail, more than the family reunion, more than the grandchildren, more than the private lunch at Highgrove, is what has really set off the latest wave of public debate. Let's start with the reaction to the security demands, because that's where the temperature has risen the fastest. Online, the response from a section of the public has been sharp, even hostile. Commentators pushing back against Harry's push for taxpayer-funded protection have argued, bluntly, that he gave up his entitlement to that kind of state-funded security when he stepped back from royal duties. One widely shared sentiment captures it well. Critics argue that Harry himself said, in his own words over the years, that he felt trapped by royal life and by the institution's protective bubble, so, the argument goes, he can't have it both ways. He can't walk away from the role and then ask the British taxpayer to fund the protection that came with it. It's a debate that cuts to something deeper than security logistics. It's about identity, whether Harry is, in the public's eyes, still one of them, entitled to the protections of royal life, or whether he forfeited that when he chose California over Kensington. PR experts have weighed in with strikingly different takes. One branding specialist praised Meghan specifically, suggesting she played the trip right by keeping such a low profile. The argument here is simple: the biggest headline to come out of the entire visit wasn't a magazine cover or a red carpet appearance, it was the quiet, private meeting with the King and Queen. From a purely reputational standpoint, that's being described as close to the best possible outcome the Sussexes could have hoped for. Restraint, in this reading, did more for their image than any interview could have. But not every expert agrees that restraint alone is enough going forward. Another PR voice has argued that the smartest move for the couple now is total silence, no interviews rehashing the reunion, no hints dropped on podcasts, no subtle references to what was said behind closed doors at Highgrove. The advice is almost stark in its simplicity: say nothing at all, because any attempt to capitalize on the moment publicly risks undoing the goodwill it generated. And then there's a very different narrative circulating, one suggesting the trip wasn't the unqualified success some are painting it as. Reports citing People magazine suggest Meghan was left feeling humiliated at points during the visit, with the trip reportedly beset by issues around security arrangements and accommodation that disrupted the family's plans to spend more relaxed time in the UK. For Meghan, the stakes are reputational as much as personal. There's a narrative, reported by a royal watcher on a UK podcast, suggesting that Harry and Meghan feel increasingly optimistic about rebuilding bridges in Britain, partly because they sense American public opinion cooling toward them. Whether or not that's the primary motivation, it's a notable shift from the framing of recent years, when the couple's focus seemed firmly fixed on their life and projects in the United States. And for Harry, the security question isn't just administrative. He has framed it, publicly, as a matter of his family's safety, pointing to how a lack of adequate protection restricts how often he can bring his children to visit the country of his birth. Critics see it differently, as leverage, a bargaining chip in an ongoing legal and political fight. The truth, as with most things in this saga, likely sits somewhere in the tension between those two views, a father genuinely worried about safety, operating within a public battle that has become as much about principle and precedent as it is about any single visit. As it stands, Harry and Meghan have returned to the United States with their children. The Invictus Games promotional work is done for this leg of the campaign, and the private meeting at Highgrove House remains just that, private. No official palace statement has laid out what was discussed, and both sides appear, for now, to be respecting that privacy. What we do know is this: sources suggest both Harry and King Charles want to meet again. That, on its own, is meaningful, a small but real signal that the door between them isn't closed. At the same time, the security review Harry has reportedly pushed for remains unresolved. And until that question is settled, whether through the courts, through a policy review, or through some other process, it's likely to keep shaping how often, and how easily, Harry can bring his family back to the UK. Some analysts believe more low-key visits could follow if this reunion opens the door further. Others believe the security dispute alone could stall any real momentum toward reconciliation. Meanwhile, Harry's relationship with William remains, by most accounts, unchanged, still distant, still largely silent. It's a reminder that even a warm moment with one parent doesn't automatically translate into progress with a sibling. Honestly, it might be both. A private, emotional reunion between a king and his grandchildren doesn't erase years of distance. It doesn't resolve a security dispute that's been fought through courts and headlines for years. And it certainly doesn't repair, on its own, whatever has broken down between two brothers who once seemed inseparable. But it does suggest something worth noting, that even amid all the legal battles, the public criticism, and the years of hurt on both sides, there's still a willingness, at least between Harry and his father, to sit in a room together. To try again. Whether that willingness turns into something lasting, or fades the way so many previous hopeful signs have before it, is a question only time, and quite possibly, the next visit, will answer. If you found this breakdown helpful, hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel keep bringing you accurate, in-depth royal coverage instead of recycled headlines. What we do know is this: sources suggest both Harry and King Charles want to meet again. That, on its own, is meaningful, a small but real signal that the door between them isn't closed. At the same time, the security review Harry has reportedly pushed for remains unresolved. And until that question is settled, whether through the courts, through a policy review, or through some other process, it's likely to keep shaping how often, and how easily, Harry can bring his family back to the UK. Some analysts believe more low-key visits could follow if this reunion opens the door further. Others believe the security dispute alone could stall any real momentum toward reconciliation. Meanwhile, Harry's relationship with William remains, by most accounts, unchanged, still distant, still largely silent. It's a reminder that even a warm moment with one parent doesn't automatically translate into progress with a sibling. Honestly, it might be both. A private, emotional reunion between a king and his grandchildren doesn't erase years of distance. It doesn't resolve a security dispute that's been fought through courts and headlines for years. And it certainly doesn't repair, on its own, whatever has broken down between two brothers who once seemed inseparable. But it does suggest something worth noting, that even amid all the legal battles, the public criticism, and the years of hurt on both sides, there's still a willingness, at least between Harry and his father, to sit in a room together. To try again. Whether that willingness turns into something lasting or fades the way so many previous hopeful signs have before it is a question only time, and quite possibly, the next visit, will answer. If you found this breakdown helpful, hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel keep bringing you accurate, in-depth royal coverage instead of recycled headlines.